Please welcome your host from random corners of the world, making his way through the jungle of online businesses to $10 million. Anatoly Spector.
All right, we're live. This intro always kicks me when I see it. I'm like, wow. Cool. Welcome to everyone who is watching and listening to this. Welcome to Journey. I'm Anatoly, as you already know. My guest today is Joe Shelerud. Joe is an Amazon seller as well as the co-founder and CEO of Ad Advance, which is a digital ad agency specializing in Amazon advertising. So we'll talk a lot about PPC, what separates them from the rest. They have full integrated targeting system, machine learning algorithms, all this cool stuff that allows them to outcompete everyone else. So we're gonna go deep into PPC, and I know that Joe has a very interesting journey himself, so I'm very, very excited. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Anatoly. It's awesome to be on.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to have you on. And the first, I want to go into a little bit of your background. I know that you have you're a chemical engineer, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
so how did you become a chemical engineer, and how does that evolve into being an Amazon seller?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a long journey, so I'll give you an abbreviated version. So I went to school. I don't know, I've always loved like math and science, and so chemical engineering kind of seemed to be right up my alley. While I was going through engineering, and even like taking back a little bit further, like I've always been really interested in like starting my own business and side hustles and everything else like that. And so I've had so many different businesses and different trials as I've been growing up. Like even starting like when I was 13 years old, I had a joke website that I made a couple $1,000s off of from advertising. And so, I mean, long story short, as I was working at a corporate finance job, I went back and got my MBA. My wife and I were currently located away from our family, and we had our first son. And our family is really close up in northern Minnesota, snowy northern Minnesota area right now. And we were really looking for a way to make our way back to Duluth, Minnesota, which is a smaller town. And trying to get a chemical engineering job up there is pretty difficult. And so that really spurred me to start looking into other ways where I could create my own business, own my own business, and get back up there. And that led me into this amazing world of selling on Amazon.
Wow. Yeah, we're definitely gonna get into that in a second. For those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and we'll get some of those, especially PPC ones. We'll talk about pay-per-click. So if you have some questions, think about that right now. We're gonna go through Joe's story, but we're also gonna talk about PPC. So make sure that you save those questions. All right. So tell me a little bit about your Amazon business. I know that you started as a seller yourself. So if you can share some of the products. If you don't want to share them, it's fine. But like, how did it look like? How did you grow that, and what are some of the challenges?
Yeah. So actually, as I was going through school as a chemical engineer, you take organic chemistry class. And with organic chemistry class, one of the key things is to be able to like visualize models or molecules in 3D. And so you had to buy this like $80 or $90 set from a book company. And it's really just these plastic pieces that you snap together to
I think you get muted for a second there. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah. I was heard about the expensive pieces that you buy, and then I think we're mute. I don't know how did that happen.
Yeah, I apologize about that. Yep. There's these expensive pieces that you can buy. And so I went out and started my own business selling these organic chemistry molecular model kits. So very niche business. Yep. And ended up growing out that pretty significantly. At the time, I was one of the only players in the space. This was back in 2014, 2015 timeframe, and started really growing that business up. And as I was scaling that business, I actually started looking for somebody to help me with my advertising.
Yeah.
So I could focus more on the seller side. And as I was reaching out to different agencies, what I found is that what I was doing with my advertising was actually a lot more complex and strategic than what was out there. So light bulb kind of went off that, maybe I can help other sellers like myself in the advertising space. And so that's really how I got started in the Amazon PPC and advertising arena.
Wow. So I'm gonna unpack a little bit what you said about this chemical kits. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Why Amazon? Like I assume there are a lot of marketplaces to sell this kind of things, and Amazon is not like probably the first choice if nobody's selling it there at the moment. So
Sure.
how did you figure out to sell on Amazon?
Yeah. So, the different ideas was like I could sell directly to bookstores or I could go through Amazon. And Amazon seemed like an easy way where I didn't have the cash up front to make massive purchases to sell directly to bookstores. Typically, they're looking to fulfill orders for, organic chemistry classes in my college were like 300 people and there were multiple classes. So I wanted to start smaller, test the market. And then as it grew, then could definitely look at selling directly to colleges, which we do right now too. So Amazon seemed like a great spot. And then the other big piece was FBA and being able to ship everything into Amazon and not have to worry about fulfilling it yourself. That sounded awesome.
Yeah.
Just because at the time when I started, I still had a full-time job too. So that's really what spurred me on. And it was listening to awesome podcasts like yours, and just getting a lot of information from other sellers too on kind of how to go through that journey and take the step-by-step piece.
Amazing. So you talked a little bit about opening an agency, the fact that you were more sophisticated than many other sellers. That's actually very interesting because when you look at PPC compared to, I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago and we're talking about PPC versus Facebook. Facebook ads, if you look at it, they are much more advanced. You can configure anything.
Sure.
PPC seems like it's like very simple,
Sure.
but it's not. It's
Yeah.
actually very complicated.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree. It matters the level of detail that you want to get into it. So you can get in very easy. And what was nice when we started our agency, the world was a lot easier too in terms of Amazon PPC. Like when we got going, there was just sponsored products. Like you turn on your auto campaigns. If you wanted to get fancy, you could populate a manual campaign, but that's really all you needed to do. And you could have very successful, profitable ads. As we know, the world has gotten much more complex. You got sponsored brands, you have sponsored display, you can do on-site, off-site advertising. We're heavy into Amazon DSP now, and it's gotten much more competitive too. And so those easy, simple strategies that we implemented from the start, which were very profitable and gave great returns, they're not going to work today just because there's so much more competition and the bids have really been driven up. So yes, it started out a lot simpler. And I'm very thankful that we got in at the time that we did, because trying to get in now, it's so much more complex and it's so much to handle, especially if you're a seller coming into it. It's one piece of your business, but man, it can consume so much time just trying to keep up with everything.
100%. I just launched a new brand and I was doing PPC myself because, again, I have a small PPC agency on the side. So for me, it's very important to know all those latest things.
For sure.
And boy, it takes a lot of time because we, these days, in my opinion, we actually, let's talk about that. I think it's important. When you launch something, my opinion, we go hard. Like we use all of those kind of things. We use like videos, and I make sure to appear everywhere. So when people look, I cannot be ignored. And I think before, I remember launching our first product maybe 3 years ago. If we were just in the first position for sponsored ads, it's going to be good enough.
Yeah.
Now, A, it's so expensive.
Yeah.
And you need to find the cheapest type of the ad. And B, not a lot of people, like some products that people more buy like video ads. Some people more buy for like headline ads or banner ads, whatever you call them. Some people buy more from DSP. So it's very important, in my opinion, to go full on. So I guess I'm very curious about, do you do PPC launches? And if so, how do you incorporate all of this?
For sure. Yep. And so usually for the clients that we're working with, we're taking on more established brands, but those established brands are constantly launching new products. So we are
Yeah.
heavily involved in the product launch phase. And so what I think is you definitely want to take it in phases as you go. So the initial stages for a product launch is you're really trying to establish that sales traction and build up that social proof with your listing, which is going to drive long-term success. And
Yeah.
so, one mistake I constantly see people making is when looking at advertising, they're trying to be profitable in terms of ACOS or ROAS from the start. And how you have to view advertising is it's really a long-term investment in that product and in that listing. So when we start running advertising, it's really trying to, again, generate that sales traffic and generate those initial reviews that are going to lead to long-term better conversion rates for your products. And so for like PPC strategies, what we'll do is we tend to focus the initial spend on the highest converting placements for ads. And the reason that we do that is we want to give Amazon all the right flags to show that you're relevant for different organic rankings as you go, so you can increase that organic ranking up. And so we take a very targeted approach, typically using manual keywords in like sponsor product top of search campaigns. If it's a product that we know video is really going to translate well into sales for, and they have videos, we'll use sponsor brands videos because those tend to convert really well. And we stick with very highly relevant keywords from the start. Let's use the keywords that we want to rank for, and then push those pretty aggressively. And at the same time, we have our typical campaign funnel structure on the side, building out longer tail keywords, but we're focusing the majority of our spend on those highly targeted keywords we know we should rank for. Let's get those initial sales. Let's get that ranking up. And those highly targeted keywords are most likely to lead to a sale, which is most likely to hopefully lead to a review, which helps your product conversion rate.
Beautiful. So I guess let's start at the beginner level, somebody who just starting out, and then we can go to a little bit more advanced. So
Sure.
for somebody who is listening, watching, and let's say their first product, and they're
Sure.
like, wow, and they want to try themselves. I would actually recommend people to try themselves to just understand what it is, because when you hire people, you at least need to understand if they're doing is make sense or not, because
For sure.
some people do some weird things. I want to tell you,
Yep.
I see some very weird things. So it's better to understand. Anywhere you go, it's better to understand. You go to for yourself, understand what you're doing. So for somebody who is starting out, they have, let's say, one product, and they have no idea even like where to start. So something simple, like what bits, like how much they should pay for certain keywords. Let's
Sure.
start with that. Like, what would be your advice?
Yeah. So if you're just starting, you want to take it simple. And there's so many different ad types, and you'll hear people that will say, okay, you want to run all the ad types at once. And I would say you definitely don't want to do that, especially if you're starting a more limited budget, like I did when I was bootstrapping myself as a seller.
Yeah.
So the most impact that you're going to have trying to establish yourself through Amazon advertising is going to be through sponsor products, manual campaigns from the start.
Okay.
And so, really, what you want to do is focus on, say, the top 10 to 20 keywords that you feel like people will search for your products for. And it's the top keywords that you know you should rank for. You're launching these products because you know your products are going to be better than the competition. And so, there's going to be a certain keywords you know you should be ranking for over time. And so, what I would do is start with sponsored products. Use top 10 to 20 keywords that you think that you should be ranking for. And then in terms of bids, Amazon suggested bids are a great place to start. And so I
Okay.
could give ranges on what you should use as bids, but it really depends on the category. If I'm targeting a really high end product, the bid's going to be a lot higher than a lower end, less competitive product. So suggested bids are a great spot to start. And then the final piece that I would add is for launching, top of search still performs really well in terms of placement. So if we talk about different placements, top of search is the ads that appear at the top of search. There's rest of search and there's product page placements are the other two. For ranking strategy, top of search is going to tend to perform a lot better. So what you can do is in that campaign, you can click the placements tab, and that would boost up top of search, maybe start like 30-40%. In general, we see it typically convert at like 90 to 100%, but as a rule of thumb, start with like 30 to 40% boost there. It's going to get you some more impressions at this most valuable spot. Use your suggested bids, and then based off of the initial results, then you can modify those as you go.
Very good. I think your microphone is a little bit shaky. I don't know. It's like a sound. Maybe it's how I perceive it, but the sound's a little bit. I don't know. It's like psh,
Okay, can you hear me?
Background noise. No, I think it's still doing it.
It's still doing it.
Yeah. I definitely can hear what you're saying, but yeah, it's a little bit shaky. But while you look at it, couple things. Yeah, I completely agree. On everything you say, I think Helium 10 or something like that might be a good spot for people to search for those keywords. If you use stuff like Cerebro or something like that, you can see at least what your competitors are ranking for.
Sure.
I think that would be good.
Is
And
this
then,
better?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, quality is a little bit worse, but I think that there's no this background noise. So I think at least I hear all what you're saying, which is just amazing.
Sorry about that.
And then what you were saying is for people who don't know where it is, I think you can go to like campaigns, and then you can go something like positioning, and then you can boost up your percentage for top of the search, and then we'll just rank it up. Though the one thing that I personally am not a big fan of that, because I'm forgetting that I use that function,
Sure.
and then I might start decreasing my bids, let's say, and I will still be spending a lot of money, and I'm like, what's happening? Why is it eating all my budget? But so we definitely, I mean, if you use something, I'm sure you're using some software. So in software, it's probably easier to do.
Sure.
But if you do it manually, like me, that is a little bit more complicated. But so you're saying top of the search still performs well, and would it be a fair thing to say that if you're not in a first line, then your ad probably is not performing well anyway? So you should only target top of the line for keywords.
It just depends on the cost per click that you're getting. So, like, say for an average top of search placement, it could convert at twice the rate of rest of search or product page. But if you're paying twice as much for it, it kind of nets out in terms of ACoS. And so top of search is great for getting high converting, meaning once they click, what's their probability to convert into a sale? So that's a great spot for ranking, because if you convert better, it will give Amazon some really good flags that will say, okay, this product is highly relevant for this keyword. I'm going to boost the organic ranking up as I go. But that being said, product page, which are the placements that show up on other ASINs or other competitors, those can still be great placements. And so can rest of search, because it's not as competitive for that spot in terms of what you have to pay for bid. So I would still definitely use all three. The reason that I'm saying boost up top of search is that you typically see a lot higher performance in terms of people who click on it. A lot of people don't even realize there's ads on Amazon. So when they see that top ranking, they assume that's the top organic ranking, and they'll click through and they'll just purchase it because Amazon knows best. So that's the reason why we provide that little boost to top of search, to give you that extra momentum when you're first launching your product.
Amazing. So let's stick with a scenario that somebody is, let's say, new and they just don't know what to do. There's a lot of other options to choose. There are different kinds of targeting. You could do like broad, phrase, or exact. Like which ones, when you're launching, which ones would you do?
Sure. Yep. So I would primarily stick with exact. But that being said, say if you have a product that has different variations. So if I have different colors for a certain product, I may want to use phrase for some of my major keywords. So say I sell a tennis racket and it comes in 5 different colors, and so somebody wants to search for a green tennis racket or a red tennis racket. I may choose to set tennis racket as a phrase keyword, because then anything they add on the front or the back end, I can still show for. So I would say primarily use exact. It's going to make sure that you're focusing your budget on really the most impact for your advertising from the start. But for some of those where people may want to add in a couple words on the front or the back side of the keyword that you specify, can be a great way to go from the start.
Yeah. Cool. That's amazing. And then the structure. Are you using multiple ad groups, or are you like everyone else I know that not using ad groups because you can't control your budget on an ad group level? Like, what's your take on that?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll take both approaches depending on the structure of the account that comes in. So we're definitely not set on one versus the other. So there, like everything in the world, there's pros and cons and trade-offs with the ways that you go. So you can definitely use multiple ad groups, and really the only thing that you're losing is like you can set campaign budgets on a campaign level. And you can set placement adjustments like this top of search placement adjustment that I just talked about on a campaign level. So in general, we prefer splitting them out just because we have more control. But again, we're in here day to day and we have a bunch of tools to manage it too. And
Yeah.
so using multiple ad groups, it can consolidate different pieces too and make it much easier to manage, especially if you're doing it manually. So just know, I mean, either way, like it's not going to be a huge pro or con. Like I know a lot of people are really set in their ways and how they approach it. The
Yeah.
only major thing you're gaining is just campaign daily budgets and then placement adjustments. But everything else, it really doesn't matter if you structure them together or separate. We like separate just because we have a little bit more control. But either way is fine.
Yeah. Um, I never used ad groups, so that's why I'm very curious.
Sure.
I always use one just because of the budget. Yeah, I can control the budget. But
Sure.
then I guess the next question is, since you guys sometimes are using ad groups, um, how do you group your keywords? Do you have like single keyword campaigns? Do you have many keywords campaigns? Like, what's your take on that as well?
Yeah, yeah. So we won't do too many single keyword campaigns. I know that some people are really set on single keyword campaigns. Like we'll do it in different cases for like ranking or launch strategies to try to get a lot of momentum and just establish you have full control of that single keyword. Typically, we'll branch out and we'll add more keywords as we go, especially because once we get through the initial launch and ranking strategy, we're constantly building on those campaigns now with new keywords that are being added, more longer tail keywords. It's always amazing to me to see how people search and find products. And so we want to
Yeah.
constantly build on that. So what we'll do is we'll separate out like ranking and launch strategies from our typical campaign funnel. And so, launch ranking, we keep to kind of these specified relevant keywords. There are times where we will do single keyword campaigns, but it's more limited just in terms of management overall. And again, we can manage it, but it gets really messy for our clients too when we have tons and tons. Like we take over some accounts and it's all single keyword campaigns, and there's
Yeah.
like, thousands of campaigns for a single product. And it seems pretty crazy to me because I think that the benefit that you're getting is pretty limited overall. So we don't use it as much.
Yeah. Yeah, when I got into 75 campaigns for one of my products, I was like, okay, I think it's too much. So I started started
Sure.
grouping them together. But they're performing very well. So I, on the other hand, like, why not if something performs well? Cool. The other side is a little bit more advanced. So let's say I'm launching,
Hmm.
and I would assume that there's a way to determine that product will work on Amazon or not work. And sometimes the product will not work and you need to pull the plug. Sometimes you're just wasting lots of money, and while you're trying different things and not PPC not working. So
Sure.
I would assume there are signs or tells to say if that's working or not when you're launching. As you said, ACOS right now at start might not be the best way to determine that. But how would you determine when to stop a campaign or when to say this product, is not going to be good for Amazon, and just tell it to your clients, I guess, the hard talk.
Sure. Yeah. So after you launch a campaign,
you get really good feedback instantly on how much it's going to cost you per click to run those ads. Remember that as you launch longer term, your relevancy is going to go up, and how you get that ad placement is a balance between your cost per click and your relevancy. So as your relevancy goes up, your cost per click is going to go down a bit. But that being said, what we can do is we can look at kind of the fundamentals for advertising. So I have somebody who's going to pay, say, $1 a click, and say long term they're going to convert at 10%. So 1 out of 10 clicks converts. So if they convert at 10%, I'm going to have to pay $10 for every sale that I have. So it's going to take 10 clicks for me to convert into one sale. Now,
Yep.
say I'm selling a $10 product. If I convert at 10%, that means I'm having to spend $10 in advertising to sell a $10 product. And that's not taking into account production costs and shipping and Amazon fees and everything else like that. And so what we
Yep.
can do is we can do the math really quickly where, all right, say you're converting at 10%, even if you double that conversion rate up to 20%, which for many products is pretty good, I'm still having to pay $5 to turn that $5 in advertising to get that $10 sale.
Yep.
And so, I'm saying, okay, maximum, maybe I can get a 50% ACOS on this campaign. If you have great margins on your product, that's awesome. But if you're selling a $10 product, you probably don't have that great of margins. And so really what you can do is kind of break it down in terms of what's the cost per click I'm seeing. What's the average conversion rate? And again, conversion rate is just once somebody clicks on my ads, what's the percentage of the time that it converts into a sale? And what's my average selling price, or AOV, average order value? And
Yep.
at that point, you can use that to calculate what's my ACOS that I can expect, even if conversion rate goes up because I now have more reviews. And is that going to make sense longer term, taking into account all the other Amazon fees, the cost to produce, potential inflation as we go, and
Yeah.
other competitors in the space. And from there, you get a really good gut check early on. Is this product going to work or not in terms of like from an advertising perspective and overall?
How many clicks do you usually wait until you can make some predictions, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really depends on the product and where it's at too. So for instance, we've advertised for luxury watches. Luxury watches have a conversion rate of 1% or less, which means
Yeah.
that 1 out of 100 clicks converts into a sale. High ticket items, so it makes sense because when they do sell, they have great margins and it costs a lot of money. And so it's really dependent. If you have a more general product, like typically you should expect anywhere from like a 10 to 15% conversion rate. We have some going into the 20 to 30%, but that typically doesn't happen too often. Those are great established niche products usually. And so in terms of clicks, the other factor to take into account is how many reviews do you have right now? If you have 0 reviews or very limited reviews for your products, conversion rate's going to look really poor from the start. Once you get that, 5 to 10 review rate, it goes up quite a bit. And then once you start getting more competitive with your competitors in the category in terms of reviews, then conversion rate expands quite a bit more. So it's a long answer to tell you it's really hard from the start just because you don't have that social proof to know how that product can convert. But that being said, if you go through the math like I just did before, and you'd need a 40% conversion rate for your products to make financial sense on the advertising standpoint, it's probably not going to happen. And so I would use that, like, rule of thumb, 10 to 20% conversion rate. If you need a conversion rate more than 20% and you don't sell super niche products or super low price products that people are going to buy rapidly, it's going to be a good early indicator. So I would just use that as a rule of thumb. Look at your expected conversion rate. But in terms of clicks, it's a little bit harder until you get those initial reviews to really judge the product's performance. So you're definitely going to have to use some intuition there. But from that initial performance, you can get a lot more information than you had before you started.
And when we talk about conversion rate, just for people who are listening so they understand, because I don't think there is such metric as conversion rate in their Amazon campaign whatever it is. I
Sure.
think there's advertising cost of sale, there is return on investment. So how would they translate that into conversion rate?
Yep. So just take your number of orders divided by your number of clicks, and that's going to be your conversion rate. So if I have one order and 10 clicks, 1 divided by 10 is going to equal 10% conversion rate overall.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So pretty easy to calculate right there. And so it's going to be your cost per click divided by my conversion rate. So if I have a cost per click of $1 divided by 10%, that's going to be $10 it takes to generate a sale. And then you can compare that to your sale price that you have to determine what your A cost will be.
And in theory, if you don't have any reviews and
Mhm.
you're just starting out, then maybe even, let's say, if you're selling something for, let's say, $30
Sure.
and your conversion rate is, I don't know, you need to pay, let's say, $25. Maybe because you don't have any reviews, it's still fine just to do it, just to sell it out until you get lose some money until you get some reviews. Or maybe some keywords are performing better than the others, so you just focus on that before you get some reviews. Would that sound the strategy? Does that make sense?
For sure. Yep. And I would definitely take that longer term approach too, where it's really tough to make some initial judgments. Like, for instance, if you're selling your products and the first 5 reviews that come back are 1 star because it was defective or whatever, that's going to be some good initial indications. But if you don't have any reviews from the start, expect that conversion rate's going to look poor. And expect that initial ACOS is going to look bad too. Remember, the initial piece for advertising when we're launching is to try to establish that sales history, try to get those initial reviews. And then at that point, now you've got more social proof where now people feel more comfortable purchasing your products. A lot more of those clicks are going to convert into sales, and we're going to feel a lot better overall for the results longer term. And so that's why it's tough, because you have to use a lot of intuition on the initial results. Just know that the initial results are probably not going to look good in terms of returns, especially if you have 0 reviews.
And then that's great. That's great. Very, very valuable. So then if now we were talking about when to ditch your product, let's say, or what doesn't work. Sometimes it's also hard to understand if that actually works very well or not. So if something is really good, not only if it's really bad. So what would be some of the indicators for you that, wow, this is very special. Something really, really cool is happening there.
Sure. Yeah, we've had products that we've launched that have really taken off with limited reviews, which has been awesome. Like,
Yeah.
if your ads are profitable from the start, like, you've got something great on your hands, because as you build up that social proof and as you further refine the advertising, it's just going to get better from there. So know that the launch phase is the starting phase, and there's a lot of upside in terms of results from that point. And so that's the key thing. I mean, if you're seeing great results from the start, if you're seeing a lot of demand, that means you've hit on something great in terms of your products, and there's just upside from there. And so, yeah, I think that's a key thing. Like,
Yeah.
if the launch is going really well, yeah, I would definitely invest more in that product.
I was just posting, just an example of people listening. I was just actually posting, I launched 3 products at the same time. So it's like a kitchen brand. I launched 3 products. And I usually know that, I mean, I work a lot on the products, so I make them different and I have experience with that. But I never seen something that happened with our product number 1. So we launched it. I went to sleep. I opened my 75 campaigns, and I'm like, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna lose $7,000. So then I'm gonna be so sad.
Sure.
And waking up, I sold about something like 50 units, and my ACOS is like 12 or something like 15.
That is
I have
amazing.
0 reviews. No, I have no idea, but people just starting buying it like crazy. And there's
Sure.
one campaign that would be like 5% ACOS, which means I only pay, like, it's profitable already. And just like it's 40 sales a day, people just like buying. As soon as I turn it on, like it's just like flow of people buying, and I would be like, wow. So I'm making money on my launch, and it started ranking like crazy, and I'll be like, why did you just order 1,000 units? I should have ordered more. But I never
that
seen anything like that. That no reviews, nothing. I mean, I did a very different. I mean, I upgraded lots of things, and it's different from everyone else. But
sure.
still, you always have this doubt when you're launching, like, if people understand what I mean and stuff like that. So for me, it was first time in my life, and I launched a bunch of products, maybe I don't know 15,
Sure.
and we always work hard on that. And then two other ones, I was like, maybe it will work for everything else, but no. Then I would get like a reality check when one of them would sell okay, still maybe like 30-40% average cost of sale, which with 0 reviews, to me, it's very, very good.
Yeah.
And then the other one would be like 50-70%, which is also not too bad when you have no reviews. But it's interesting how you might believe in some products and say, this will definitely work, but it's not. And then because when you look at average bids, you might think, okay, I'll make lots of money. But as soon as you put it on, you see how really people pay, how much you need,
Sure.
you need to pay.
Yep.
That's a big reality check. And then you understand, wow, I think I'm screwed now, because other people paying like twice more, 3 times more. Like the average, like suggested bill will be 75 cents. People pay $3 to appear on a page one. So something like that. My question would be, is there a way to gauge that somehow? I know some people do like test PPC sales where they just buy something from Walmart, just throw it on Amazon, and then understand like that. Do you
Sure.
have any strategies how to gauge that beforehand?
Let's see. So we put out some benchmarks just on different like categories. So we look at we separate things on different categories, and so we've got some general benchmarks. Cost per click has gone up like 30% year over year. So it's increased quite a bit as competition has really grown. Yeah, one way to gauge that would be, I mean, if you find a similar product, say at Walmart, and you want to list it, then try to advertise for it at that point. Now you can definitely you can get that cost per click really quickly for what that product is, and so that would be a good way to kind of gauge what that CPC is. I think in general you'll be able to tell, or at least get a good benchmark from the start, because at the early days you're really trying to evaluate, is this going to make financial sense? And so knowing if the average click is going to be 50 cents or $5 is going to be pretty critical. So
Yeah.
there's some good benchmarks, but you do find these weird niches where for the general category it's a lot less, but then it's super competitive in this one area because you have like 3 competitors and they're all driving up the bids against each other. So yeah, finding other products and actually advertising for them is a great way to start.
All right. Yeah, that's great. So if we go more advanced for people who have access to many different tools like brand registry, if you do, you have access to much more different kinds of ads. Um, which ad types, in your opinion, will work best in terms of return on your investment apart from the keyword ones, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, so overall, if you're more advanced and you've definitely got some expertise in advertising, or you have somebody to support you, um, we like to use a holistic approach. And so we love to use all the ad types. And essentially what we do is we test these different areas. And then depending on that product and what's performing, we're going to boost budgets into those areas that are performing. So, in terms of different like ad types that are pretty interesting, like sponsor brand video, that can be a great one, especially if you have a product like that really needs demonstration, or if you can just show like assembly of it or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or else the other piece is like, for those really solid brands that are trying to sell like upscale products, like just that lifestyle branding that you can do through sponsor brand video is awesome.
Yeah.
Another piece that's cool with the ad type is that as I'm scrolling through the search results, it eats up a lot of screen space. And the other beautiful thing is that people don't pay until they actually click on the ad. And so you can watch the video, and if they watch the video, but then they don't, looks like my camera went out, but then they don't
Yeah.
click, then at that point, what they can do is you don't have to pay for that ad itself, but they got
Mhm.
a full preview of it. So if somebody clicks on that ad, then you know that they're going to be interested and they already had this awesome preview of it before.
Yeah, for this product that we launched, the video, and we have like a um, luxury kitchen brand, I would put it that way. And we really spend a lot of time here in Bali. We hired like a team and they recorded a video. We hired a model, how she uses all these products. And she's like, because we're targeting female. And this video ad is just killing it. And
Sure.
it's so much cheaper than keyword ads. And it just appears, as you're saying, you're scrolling and you see it right there. It's like, it's so big. And it's just, yeah. And I would just buy mine just because, well, I'm showing you what it is. You don't have any doubts. You don't need to look at reviews because here it is. I'm showing you everything. And if it's
Sure.
a simple product, I don't know. I would just buy it without reviews because, well, if it's just something that's simple like spatula or whatever, you don't
Sure.
really need to have a lot of reviews to understand it. On supplements, it's a different thing. Like you're gonna eat it, there might be some consequences, but in things like that, I think this is where you can shine, in
Sure.
my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And if you have different products that perform really well for video or really showing off creatives, like a more advanced topic is actually Amazon DSP.
Let's talk
So
about
it's
that.
yeah, so it's apart from the sponsored ads advertising wing, and so DSP, when you compare it to sponsored ads, how we like to say it, it's kind of like sponsored ads on steroids. Um, you can use all the data from Amazon, but a couple of cool things is that you can create custom creatives. So we don't
Nice.
have as much control for what our ad looks like with sponsored ads. For DSP, you can really tune that up. There's videos that you can implement. And so a lot of different ways that you can display your brand. So if like sponsor brand video is working really well for you, that could be a great spot to go. The other cool thing with Amazon DSP is you can set up different audiences. And so say like one cool audience that you can set up is, say if you have a couple competitors that you know you have a better product and you really want to target, you can actually set up an audience of people who viewed your competitor's product detail page but didn't purchase. And now you can
Nice.
target them with ads. And so DSP is both on and off of Amazon. So that's kind of the other unique piece, is that sponsored display allows us to target people off of Amazon, but DSP gives us a lot more control. So if somebody's on weather.com or their favorite news site, sometimes you'll see an Amazon listing pop
Yeah.
up for an Amazon listing that you just saw. That's typically going to be like a DSP ad. So it really allows you to expand. Before you go there, I definitely make sure that you've got a great sponsor brand or sponsored ad strategy. But then DSP is another great spot to go into, especially if like custom creatives, like your videos are doing really well for you. That
Yeah.
could be a great spot to look into next.
And do you have access to it with brand registry? How do you get access to DSP?
Yeah, so there's definitely more hurdles for DSP. And so there's more hoops to jump through. It's a good and a bad thing because those who are in it, you don't have as much competition just because it is a pain to get going with it.
Yeah.
So, typically for DSP, if you go directly through Amazon, you have to commit like, I can't remember the dollar amount is right now. I
There's
think it's
like
like
lots of
30 or
money.
35 grand. Yeah, with DSP ads. And, as individual sellers, we're probably not going to want to do that from the start. So another option is going through an agency like us or other people in the space that offer DSP. The key benefit is that we can kind of pool all of the advertisers that we have together to meet those spend thresholds. So we can get you going a lot earlier and smaller. But again, I would focus on the sponsored ad side first. But then DSP is this awesome next step, but you typically have to go through like an agency or commit a lot of money. And if you're on the fence, I would definitely go through the agency route, take it with a grain of salt because I'm from an agency, but just seeing the results and what the campaigns look like, I would go the agency route with me or some of the awesome other people in the space too.
Amazing. Yeah. That's very good. Uh, yeah, so I think we went through like beginner to advanced. If we look at new features, because Amazon is keep on adding things to their ad platform like every day.
Sure.
I see something new. So what are the new features that makes you excited? Let's say something that was launched in 2021 or 2022. I don't think they launched anything in 6 days,
Sure.
but in 2020, end of 2021, what are some of the things that you've seen that excites you?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I guess picking a couple favorites, brand analytics and brand metrics are really cool. So for brand analytics, like you can find that in Seller Central if you're brand registered, and you can really dig into a lot of details like what's your repeat purchase rate for your products, or if somebody searches for your products, like what product do they eventually end up buying. There's a ton of data that is so useful in terms of establishing, especially like if you have, say, a product where people come back and they buy more from your brand or they buy repeat purchases. Like it's so valuable to determine how much those customers truly mean to you. Like in terms of like lifetime value, every customer means a lot to us. But so that's one piece that's really cool. In terms of like sponsored display, so sponsored display has a lot of different targeting types, which are really cool to implement too. So like for instance, if you sell a product that typically gets repeat purchases, we can set up a purchasing audience and you can set different look back windows. So if somebody purchased from me within the last 90 days, maybe I want to target them again with my ad so they come back and they buy from me again. The views remarketing is another cool one where you have different look back windows. So if somebody comes and they view my product detail page, but then for whatever reason they don't purchase, now I can use ads to retarget them again. They just expanded their look back windows so you can target bigger audiences. So that's another fun one to implement too, depending on your product, especially if you drive repeat purchases, like the purchases audience is pretty exciting.
Wow. Yeah. Um, Amazing. I haven't used DSP that much, so for me, all of this is very, very exciting and definitely getting in there. So that's really, really cool. Okay, so I want to switch back a little bit to your journey because I'm also interested to hear more. I know that when you started your Amazon business, and I'm asking because I have two children, and I know
Sure.
that when you were starting your business, you had your first child, or maybe not
Mhm.
first, but a child was born
Yeah.
when you were having. So you became a father and you started Amazon business. How was it to juggle these things, and
Yeah.
what did you learn from it?
Yeah. So it's definitely challenging as you go. So I've got three kids, and they're all 2 years apart. So currently they're 3 years old to 7 years old. But yep,
Wow.
Owen, who was our firstborn, he was born right when I was starting the Amazon business. And so there were a couple of key things that kind of led to success there. Like the first was full alignment with my wife on like what the key goals were and why I was starting this business and everything else like that. And so we were fully aligned. The goal was to get back up and to live with family. And I think another key piece was just establishing like time blocks. So when I would come home from my 9 to 5 job, then it would be family time until we got the baby to bed. And then at that point, now it's working on the Amazon business side. And so as
True
that grew,
hustling.
yeah, as that grew, like then it turned into working on the agency along with the Amazon business. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of sleepless nights in there. Just looking
Yeah.
back, like, yeah, you definitely lose some sleep. Like, you've got to have a really solid reason why you're doing that. Make sure you're fully aligned, and then also make sure you're not losing focus on those who matter the most, which are your family and your kiddos. So, yeah, just having that solid time where that is just dedicated to you. I'm not focusing on anything else. Just trying to balance those two things at the same time. Personally, for me, I wouldn't be able to do it. So we had to set those strict time blocks as we went.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important. I also have two kids. One is about 7 months.
Yeah.
So for us, it's a time, definitely a challenging time. But living in places like Bali, very lucky to have access to a lot of help because nannies are much more affordable here than in US and stuff like
Sure.
that. So I'm definitely a lucky ones. But for people who are listening, yeah, definitely, I think what you're saying makes complete sense, to block out times and to have a reason why. Because if you don't have a reason why, there's no reason to do this if you don't have a reason.
If it's just for the money, or if you don't have that solid like driving goal, it's really hard to stick with it. Because there were many days where I much would rather have just gone to bed versus staying up till 2 in the morning working on the business. But if you have those key goals, they'll push you along, and make sure that you follow through.
Cool. Actually, that leads me to my next question that I love to ask. I think that brings a lot of interesting conversation and interesting lessons. So definitely you had a journey building an Amazon business, building an agency, working full time. If you look back at I'm sure there was days, as you're saying, that things did not go well.
Sure.
So if you look back at some of the bigger failures that you had in your journey, can you tell what they are and what did you learn from them?
Sure. Yeah. So, starting with a success, I think it was picking the right partner to start out with. So, as I was growing this business, realized that I wasn't going to be able to do it myself. And so finding the right partner to join along. And that leads into failures. Like, we've taken the mentality that in the digital advertising space, you need to move quickly. And so we need to learn some hard lessons as we go. And so one key piece that we did from the start is we had clients from the very beginning. We could have waited to develop our system and test our different items till, we were multiple years in, but having clients as we went provided that immediate feedback as we went. And so I think some early like failures from the start is like, when we were initially starting, not focusing on the holistic picture and focusing very specifically on just the advertising results. Say focusing just specifically on like ACOS, and not taking into account, are they completing repeat purchases? Like, is this in the launch phase? Like, what are the key strategies? And so we learned very quickly that there is not a one size fits all solution for different products and different sellers. So, that was probably one key item, is taking the bigger picture into account and knowing that, as a seller, I know that advertising is just one piece of your overall business. And so you always have to look at things holistically, take into account where your products are at, what your goals are, before you just focus on, say, like on a single metric on the advertising side.
Yeah, completely agree. That's very, very important. So the experiment that I like to go with my guests is, let's say you just have $5,000 in the bank. You have some debts to pay. Let's say maybe in 6 months you need to pay them back. And then you don't have your company. You're just starting from scratch. What would you do?
Sure. Yeah, right now, I would definitely. So I'd kind of nerd out. I would get into the software side. And
All
so,
right.
yep. So for me, like with our advertising agency, we were always cash flow positive from the start. So like we had clients from the start, and so that initial funding that we needed was very minimal. That being said, my Amazon business, like that started out from like, you know, my initial investment was $1,000 to $2,000, and grew that into multiple millions of dollars in revenue, which is awesome. And so that was just constantly reinvesting it. So in terms of like, I don't know, the next piece, like I would say like a software business where I can somewhat code, but getting into that more, I think would be really cool. Like building out some tech, like everything is just moving so much towards the internet space, that would be really cool. In terms of which industries, I'm honestly not sure. Been so focused on advertising and haven't stopped focusing on it. So I could give you the standard answer where I'd start another advertising agency, but I don't know if that's as interesting.
Whatever it is, but yeah, software, very interesting.
Yeah.
As a software engineer, like my background in software engineering,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I mean, you can definitely bootstrap something and make it happen
Sure.
many times. Amazing. So the last section in this show I have called Rapid Fire. So I ask the same questions to all the guests to just get their different sort of different opinions on different things. And the first question I like to ask is, what are some of the routines that help you to get into focus and keep you motivated in your business?
Sure. Yeah. One cool routine that we have is every day we start off with I manage our sales and our marketing team. And so we just have a 15-minute meeting in the morning where we just kind of recap like, all right, what happened yesterday? If we start out the week, what's our goal for the week? What's our key goals for the day? And then our business development lead, he's got a motivational quote each day.
Oh,
And
wow.
then yeah, then we kind of ended off with a little like happy sales day and and go away. But it's like just this awesome piece where we get together as a team, talk through
Yeah.
goals, evaluate yesterday's performance, and then you just get really focused on the day as you go. So that's been a fun new routine that we've established. I think you can kind of take this away too, as just like taking that time every day to really like reflect on the previous day and then establish what's key goals for the day. Or if you just
Yeah.
kind of go into it blindly, you can I don't know. There's a lot of times where you
Spend
end up
lots
to
of
where you didn't
days
start.
doing nothing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think in Agile, you call it daily Scrum.
Sure.
So yeah, that's very helpful. That's software teams do it all the time as well, and I think yeah, it's very valuable for any team to be, as you're saying, to understand what are the goals and be in sync with each other.
Sure.
Amazing. The other question is, how did your life change when you started making those millions in revenue, started having this successful ad agency? From the time when you were working full time, I guess, how did your quality of life change?
Sure. I think probably the biggest thing is just the freedom and control that you get. So, in terms of like lifestyle and everything, we really haven't changed that much. We're pretty easy going there. But in terms of just the freedom and the control that you feel over your life, is huge. And the other cool piece is that you have the control to build up an amazing team around you. So my co-founder Matt, like, best decision other than my wife and family that I made. All the team that surrounds you, like it is just a fun group to come in and work with every day. And so to have control with who you spend your time with throughout the day, is absolutely amazing too. So I would just say that freedom, control, and that time that you have, you can invest your time where you want to.
Yeah, beautiful. Um, the other question I do have is, what are some of the beliefs that they used to hold? It could be, I don't know, 5 years ago, it could be yesterday. You can take it any way you want, that you don't hold anymore.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think some initial beliefs that I had was I always limited what I felt I was capable of, especially very early on. And so I think it was always starting and thinking smaller than I should be. And so like if I look at where our agency is at today, when I started, I wouldn't even thought in this realm. And here we are. And so I'm trying to take that into account more. It's like not setting the goals too small, and really believing in what we're doing that we can achieve that. And so I think that's just kind of a mentality thing, like just opening your mind to really what's possible and opening yourself up to like these bigger goals that you believe that you can achieve. Each time I approached a business, it was much too small of a scope. Where now when I look at it, I really try to challenge myself to open that up and really think a lot bigger.
Wow, yeah, that's a great belief to have, that you can do anything and everything is possible. That is amazing. The other question I do have is, if you are a book reader, we can take it. If you're not, we might go to the next one, because some people
Sure.
don't read books. But I'm a book nerd, so that's why I always strive to get some recommendations. So, which book or books have influenced you the most? It could be business books, it could be spiritual books, any books.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a avid book listener. So my Audible collection, I think I just broke the 200 book mark there. And so I don't know, one that I always go back to, pretty simple book, but it's the Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And so it's just this simple concept that every day trying to establish these very small habits that over time will build into great results. And so, it's framing up like if you look at day to day what you do, like it doesn't feel that meaningful. But if you look back over, say, the last year, all of a sudden it's like, wow, like we achieved a lot. And it was through all these minor incremental changes as you go. And so I think it's just this mentality of every day trying to leave that day a little bit better than when you came into it. And over time, those habits and those things that you establish are really going to add up. So that's one that I always go back to, just in more of like a mindset that goes along with the book.
Yeah, it's a great book. I'm also a book listener, so definitely my Audible collection is also similar to yours. So definitely in the same boat there. So that's really good. A great book. We'll put in the show notes, so you guys don't have to write it down. You can just check out show notes after that, and we'll have everything there. And in terms of other media, you were saying that some podcasts helped you. So, what are some of your favorite podcasts, mailing lists, YouTube channels, anything that helped you keep up to date for business and for your other interests? Anything that
Sure.
you want to recommend?
Yeah. I mean, so I started with the Amazing Seller podcast. At this point, it's probably pretty outdated, because that
Yeah,
was
I
like
think it
back in
even
like the
changed the name.
and it's even changed the name at this point, so you probably won't even be able to find it. Some key recommendations that I have, like, and this is getting more into like the software side, like Udemy, taking some of their online courses, man, it is so valuable. And like, it's like you can get deals for like $10 for a course, and just being able to learn Python or like SQL, like, being able to dig into like we have a massive database now, and so we had to learn how to do that. So I would highly recommend some of the like the structured courses if you're really trying to learn a topic. You can get a college education just from very minimal amount of money from some awesome instructors. So that's one of my go-tos if I'm really trying to dig deep into a topic. I'm going to go right there because I want it structured and I want to get the most bang for my time, really.
Yeah.
And so that's the key thing that I would recommend.
Yeah, it's great. Also use Udemy very, very often. For coding, there's also Code Academy, which is sort of really triggered towards coders, where you can go and do some assignments, and there's live development environments. So yeah, definitely recommend to check it out as well for those who are willing to learn how to code.
Yeah,
Um, I haven't learned how to code using it. I went to school, but if I need a new language or learn something, I just get a course and do it as well.
sure.
Cool. So we are here in the last question. The last question is, it's the podcast called 10 Million Journey because it's my journey scaling business to 10 million. So I ask every guest to give me an advice on the next steps. Right now, as I said, we launched a brand, free products. We actually did pretty well for a first month. We did about $40,000, $45,000.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I'm very excited. So I want to get this brand to 1 million and then hopefully scale it to, actually, why hopefully? And then scale it to 10 million. Just if you could give me an advice, anything that comes to your head, something I need to think about, consider, yeah, anything at all.
Sure. The most successful sellers that I see on Amazon are establishing very solid brands overall, and these brands that can lead to cross purchases between your products. As Amazon gets more and more competitive, say cost per click's going up, and so it gets harder and harder to get that initial sale. But what I'm seeing is those brands that have really established a strong brand presence overall, where they're either driving repeat purchases or cross purchases, are doing really well, and I think are setting themselves up for the long term. So that would probably be my one recommendation. And if I was starting up another seller business, that's really what I would be looking at doing is what's a suite of products that I can really drive repeat or cross purchases so I can make more from that customer who initially buys from me. So that might be my one recommendation, is really focus on the brand and products that can really go along with each other.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm launching 3 products of the same brand,
That is
just to go
awesome.
hard and do exactly that, cross promote them. Amazing, Joe. It was really, really cool. I really enjoyed it. Before we go, how can people find more about you, your agency, if they want to hire you, anything you want to share?
Yeah. So a great spot, you can just go to adadvance.com, or another great spot is to follow me. LinkedIn is the primary platform that I'm posting on, or else you can go to the Ad Project podcast. So we've got a lot of different channels, but probably LinkedIn, the podcast, or the website are great spots to go.
Amazing. I'll put everything in the show notes. You guys can check it out. Thank you. I appreciate you spending your time, and I learned a lot today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Anatoly. It was awesome.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, you guys can follow us. Everything is down below. If you're listening to that, it's at 10 Million Journey on Instagram, Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook as well, Anatoly Spector. And I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.